Good afternoon. The world is experiencing the second round of the Russian roulette after President Putin and his government threatened to attack Ukraine and having strategically moved their troops close to the border. How are markets responding to this? Is the rest of the world catching a cold? This is our conversation today as we look at markets today. I'm your host, Odhiambo Ramogi. Before we go into the conversation, as usual, I'll take you to the market to have a look at how the Nairobi Securities Exchange performed in the day. We'll start with the gainers and then the losers and the movers. The super gainer today, after we have looked at it, I think the super gainer is Sanlam Kenya PLC, having gone up 9.7% in the green. It's followed by East African Portland Cement Company, registering some very significant improvement, having gone up 7.46%, closing the day at 7 shillings and 20. British American Tobacco closed the day at 468 shillings per share, being 4.64% up. Kapchorwa Tea closed the day at 95 shillings, being 3.26% up. Nairobi Business Ventures closed the day at 5.16%, closed the day at 5 shillings 16 cents, being 3.2%, and closing the list of the top 5 gainers of the day. Let's go to the losers. Umeme Limited closed the day at 5 shillings 80 cents, being 6.2% lower. All right, and then TransCentury closed the day lower by 6.15%. TPS East African Serena closed the day at 3.7% lower. Home Africa closed the day at 2.63% lower. Flame Tree Group Holdings closed the day at 2.34% lower. The movers of the day, Safaricom traded 6.7 million shares, followed by KCB Group that traded 2 million shares, followed by Equity Group Holdings that closes 1 million shares. I think that's a significant amount of shares traded today. The Cooperative Bank equally did well for itself at having traded 853,000 shares. And ABSA closed the list of the top 5 movers, having traded 586,000 shares. Quite a performance. This is a significant improvement from what we had last week, because we saw a comparatively subdued market. Well, to join us in the conversation of the Russian roulette, second round of it actually, because I think the first round was when they went to Crimea and decided that Crimea is part and parcel of Russia all of a sudden. But to join us in this conversation, I'm hosting today Stella Swakei, who is an investment analyst from Cytonn Investment. Stella, welcome to the studio.
Thanks a lot, Ramogi.
Excellent.
I'm grateful for you having me here.
Excellent. Perhaps a commentary on how the markets performed today. What do you make of it?
So we are seeing so many, or most of the stocks. We are seeing most of the stocks gaining all around, from growth stocks, value stocks, and we will mostly link this to the investor confidence. So we have seen the economy recovering, we have seen the global economy as well. So we also expect the Kenyan economy, that is the local or domestic economy, to recover in tandem. So we still again expect more stock, or most of the stocks in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, to continue increasing in value, or the share price to continue rising.
And how is the international market performing as of now?
Okay, so we can begin from the ground. So we can look at, for example, at the close of last week, or how the markets opened this week. So we had the top gainers, or the exchanges that gained the most. So we saw the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the All Share Index, gain most, and this was mainly or is mostly attributable to the positive investor sentiment because of the rally in the global fuel prices. So this one has so much contributed to the rise in the share prices of most stocks in Nigeria. So we have an example of the stocks in the industrial sector and also in the banking sector. We have stocks like EcoBank, the Nigerian Exchange Group. We also have Airtel Africa. So these are the stocks that are benefiting from the rally in global fuel prices that has seen most of the stocks in the region rise.
Right.
Yeah.
Nigeria was the best performing stock market globally last week.
Yeah. So we also had the what do we call FTSE 100 also gain in the global arena, and it gained mostly because of the better than expected data for the UK. So we saw UK's GDP expand by 1% for Q4 in 2021, and this was against the expectation of a decline in the GDP based on the environment that was there in Q4, seeing that we saw an emergence of new variants of the COVID-19, for example, or to be more specific, the Omicron variant. So this one led to most analysts expecting the GDP to decline, but on the contrary, the GDP increased or expanded by 1%. So this one, so most of the stocks rise in share price as investors again increased their confidence in the market.
In the FTSE, and this pushed up the FTSE 100.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Let's get to the conversation of the day, which is the Russians behaving badly or goodly. They have threatened that they'll invade Ukraine, and of course they have moved some of their troops there. Yeah. Although I saw a report yesterday from Bloomberg that they have agreed perhaps to withdraw from this. Do you foresee a possibility of an invasion?
So yeah, the Russians claimed or announced that they are pulling back some of their troops from the Russian border. So they're saying they're taking back their troops to their base, to their original base, but we see some of the bases in or at the border of the Ukrainian borders. So again, we don't know how they are pulling back, yet they are still at the border. So again, the USA's President Joe Biden, they're still skeptical of the announcements, claiming that it's too early to rule out the possibility of an invasion by the Russians. And yeah, this is true. It's too early to rule out a possibility of them pulling back, because the Russian President Putin is still forcing things and saying that they'll still press on their demands, the demands of being eliminated from the NATO countries, and they want them to be given a guarantee that Ukraine will never be part of the NATO. So they still want the demands to be met, and we are not sure
how that will turn out.
Yeah.
What does Russia stand to benefit with war with Ukraine, considering the fact that I would imagine war is expensive,
really?
Costly even. There are many opportunity costs to war. What do they stand to benefit?
Okay, so I'd look at this, or I'd want us to look at this as mostly as a personal gain to the president of Russia, Putin. So we saw him push on the bill of his term being extended as president to 2 terms extra, each of them 6 years. So at this point, Russia has grown so much in capability and in strength, and they would really like to be over or to have authority over most of their neighbors, including Ukraine, which Putin claims that they have a history or a bond from the 80s. So yeah, so this is one of the countries or one of the territories that he would want to have more power over. And again, seeing that his term is ending in 2024, having victory over the West or over the US or the NATO countries will give more power to his legacy, to his positives. So this is a chance. We'd like to look at it as a chance for him to enforce or to increase his positives, his legacy, so that he can get back into power. And also, he's pushing so much on what I've mentioned earlier, being independent or not part of the NATO, and pushing so much for Ukraine not being part of it as well. So it's kind of him wanting the Eastern Europe part to be independent from the NATO, and the USA or the NATO countries to retract or pull back their security guarantee to these areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think the bigger European region will be resilient? I mean, will they be able to survive this attack?
Sure enough, the European region has been resilient, has passed over so many attacks, whatever you had mentioned first, Crimea, the Brexit issue. So they have some strengths, or most of the strengths. We can mention a few. For example, the Union itself, the European Union, which gives more power to the European region, such that these countries they formed the Union to be able to diversify, to enhance, and to add more strength to the Europe region, such that any attacks, any economical shocks, they'll be able to absorb all of them. We also have the euro, that is the currency. So we've seen the European Bank, the Central Bank of Europe, have more or increase the reserves, the reserves to cushion the euro against the shocks that might come around. We've also seen the international trade. So we can mention that, or we can all see that the European region or the Eurozone is one of the most strong, or is one of the most strong global partners, or a part that contributes to the global trade. So, for example, the European region contributes to a maximum of more than 15.9%, or let's say 16% of the global exports, and around 14% of the global imports. So if we look at this is a very huge percentage that the European region can be able to leverage on, such that the economy will not be affected by the shocks that come around from any attacks, such as the Russian invasion into the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other European leaders that are, quote unquote, marshalling their troops for battle if Russia invades Ukraine? Yeah. What I'm trying to establish is there other geopolitical effects of this interaction between Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah, definitely. They have to come around because, again, Russia is surrounded by other countries, and we have seen in the past week the US and other trading partners to Russia instill or introduce sanctions to the Russian country in case they invade the country, that is Ukraine. So one of the sanctions is that Joe Biden, the president of USA, says that all the oil and gas supplies to the Russian country will be stopped. So
you mean all the oil exports to Russia?
Yeah, and the gas supplies will be stopped too.
But I think Russia has the biggest oil and gas supply in the region.
Yeah, it does, but they definitely depend on other exports from other countries. So these are the countries that are saying they will stop exporting their products to Russia. So we will see. Or again, Russia supplying their oil, exactly what you were saying, supplying their oil to other countries. So basically the trade that happens between Russia and the other countries. So we will see.
Will be affected.
Yeah, this will definitely be affected, and we will see some things like constrained supply causing demand to go up, and definitely the prices of fuel and gas will also go up. for Russia and the countries that surround Russia, such as Germany, Poland, Belarus.
Yeah, because I know Russia supplies almost 80% of the oil and gas in France, and other countries as well.
Yeah.
So, and this will reverberate across board if, for example, there are sanctions against Russia.
Yeah.
It means the French will not be able to get their oil and gas, and that would hinder production of other industrial goods in some of these countries. It will affect household consumption and household economics significantly.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm hearing is there will be effects across board. There will be effects of this invasion, and this, especially the political effects of the sanctions, as you're saying, will in fact impact significantly on the European economy, whether it's France, Germany, and whether they like it or not, the Americans have already gotten themselves into the mix as well. Do you see them also getting affected?
Definitely, they will get affected. So, as we've said on the previous point, Russia supplies most of the oil and gas, and definitely it supplies to US as well. So, fuel is one of the most, or the basic component of production, manufacturing, processing, and all these processes that goes on in the market. So a rise in it or constrained supply, because if they cut supplies with Russia, they'll again look for other sources or other alternatives, for example, the Emirates, those regions that even us get the oil from. So again, they will increase competition in these areas, and people like Kenya, other countries that depend on these alternatives that they are going to, will have to cope with the rising prices, because definitely when the supply is lower, the demand goes high and prices always go up.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, let's take a break so that our prices and our time doesn't go up. We are having a conversation around the Russian roulette, the behavior of the Russian government to invade Ukraine, and how this will affect global markets, whether in Europe or in the rest of the world. When we come back, we are going to now dissect the Russian market, and if indeed it has been responding to these threats. We are also going to have a keen look at the French market, which is really dependent on the Russian oil and the Russian market. Don't go away, stay tuned.